And this is the End Show, and I'm your host, Gus Summers, and we have Evie Ryland in the studio.
Hi.
Hi. Going to give us some great insight into the world of art.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, her book, of course, and some upcoming plans. Evie, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really happy to be here.
Yeah. You know, it's so much has happened since the last time we talked.
Yeah.
I know that you met at the Venice Art Crawl.
Yeah.
And you were having a book signing. Well, why don't we start off with your book, Sun Gone Nova? Tell us a little bit about that.
Okay. Well, that's it's a collection of cartoons that I do for the Century City newspaper, and they're single-panel comics. So they're really just little quips of humor, something that's entertaining for everyone, all ages. You know.
Now tell us what got you into comics in the first place.
It's funny because I've always drawn. That's my thing. Always been an artist, always interested in the arts. But what got me to do the cartoons was just, I guess, being in the right place at the right time. I had a friend of mine that needed to have comics for the newspaper. And the reason that's actually important is because when you have comics in a newspaper, it kind of brings more readership, It's just something interesting. And people say, oh, well, if anything, I'll read the comic, and then they start to read everything else. But with, with me, they said, well, you're an artist, so why don't you do the cartoons? I said, well, I'll see if I can be funny.
That's great, and very successful at it, I know.
Thank you, yeah.
And they're single panels, am I correct?
Yes, yeah, single panel cartoons. So each one is stands alone,
Right. And where do you get some of your ideas? Just everyday events, walking down the street, you see something humorous, you thought, well, I'm going to put that in that panel.
Yeah. It just comes from just being observant, Anything that's around you, even, you can be watching TV, something somebody will do, Traffic's a big inspiration. Lots to do when you're sitting there stuck on the 405.
I've been with you on that one several times, yes. Usually what I think about isn't as funny when I'm stuck in that traffic. So I know we had a great conversation that first time we met. We talked about art, because I love art. Tell us a little bit about that. I know you have a great love for art.
I do. I think art is such an important part of our lives, and it really gets pushed to the side in a lot of things. It's the thing that gets left out. It's the programs that get dropped. But the importance of how it creates the mind of children, when you're growing up, when you're learning, I think that affects everything that they're going to do in the future, their business, their interactions with other people, to be able to have that creativity. So anytime that, you can instill creativity in someone, I just think it's so important.
Right. So how did this fascination start? I'm sure as a little girl, did you see some books? Did someone introduce you to some art in itself that you really gravitated towards that?
Well, my mom was an artist, of course, so she definitely wanted to make sure that I had that creative bug going like she had, and she would introduce me to different artists in the city, and I did take a couple of art classes when I was a kid, and she taught me. Of course, she was into oil painting, which I wasn't allowed to play with too much when I was growing up, but
get stains everywhere.
Exactly. Yeah.
What does she enjoy painting? Is she a classical artist? Does she enjoy the classical aspect, or
she did a lot of landscapes? She was definitely a lot of landscapes. One of my favorite things she did, though, ever, was she did two paintings, actually. One was a portrait of Willie Nelson that was her favorite at the time, and I love that portrait. And the other one was a painting of a rooster, which I think my brother has that still somewhere. I'd like to see it. I love that painting.
Does she like country music? Is that why she picked Willie Nelson? Was she just a big country music fan?
I think partially. Back then I think she was more into the, she was country classic rock. She liked a lot of the stuff. Bob Seger was big for her, I think.
Bob Seger's big, Silver Bullet Band, right?
Yeah.
Chris Christopherson. And,
I know. All these names you forget,
Did you grow up liking that music? Country music, or were you more of a rock and roller?
I think as a kid I didn't like it, but that's, I think you always want to do the opposite of what your parents like, whatever it is. If your parents are hardcore rock musicians, you're going to like country,
Right.
But if they like country, you're going to, you want to be a headbanger.
You're right. So completely different from what they were. Yeah,
right.
That's great. So as a little girl, she introduced you to art. So through high school, you were painting and sketching and such?
Yeah, definitely. You just kind of want to draw, I think, is something that, it was just something that, it was relaxing. It was a way to, express whatever you were feeling at that time and get things out. And of course, it would impress all your friends, oh, you can draw that. Can you draw a picture of me? And that sort of thing. And
all the favorite cartoon characters and such.
Yeah, exactly. I would draw all my friends as cartoon characters, and that was their favorite. That was a lot of fun.
Did you ever draw anything for the school newspaper or the yearbook? Anything like that?
Not really. I went to a lot of different schools. I wasn't in one school, so I didn't even have a lot of interaction with the programs, the newspapers and that sort of stuff with the schools. But
okay. So what kind of student were you? Nice and attentive? Drawing?
Yeah, well, I was always into, math was definitely not my forte, I will say that. But English, I loved all my English classes, history class, a lot of fun. And I think that helps today, because that's, you got to have that inside of you, and that inspiration from history helps for sure.
Right. I can definitely a great connection for art history. I know you love art history. We had a conversation on that.
Yeah.
But tell us how that developed. At what point did you really start studying artists and their lives and their works?
Well, that really wasn't until my 20s when I wanted to go to college, and I thought, well, how much is this going to cost? And da-da-da-da-da. And then I realized, all of these books, all these art books and stuff, they were all at the library, just free for you to read and look at. And I thought, well, why pay for an art degree, which, pretty much we all know that means so much today in society, that, why don't I just research all this stuff myself? And so that's what I did. I would just hang out at the libraries and coffee houses and drink coffee and read art. Books and talk art. Yeah, exactly. And
Nice.
Just kind of the fifth state of the realm. We'd all sit around and entertain each other.
And I know you have some favorite artists. I know Bosch is one of your favorite artists.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Tell us how that developed and how did you get that?
Well, I think once you're studying all the different artists and their techniques and you try to think of their reasoning of why, when you're reading their biographies and stuff, and you just kind of learn, oh, well, I like this personality, or I like that you don't know anything about this particular artist, and then you start to I think emulate them in a way. You learn. I think that's how you kind of learn, is by emulating them. So
right. I know he had. We talked about this. Little secrets in the way he painted, little things that people discovered. Tell us a little bit about that.
Oh, you're thinking of Van Eyck. You're thinking of yeah. Van Eyck was. The thing I like about him is a Flemish painter. They don't actually know a lot about him, but his work, he was originally trained as a miniaturist painter. So, he would paint these tiny little images for book plates and that sort of thing. And once he would do large-scale paintings, that miniaturism was still in him. And I think I do that a lot, too. When I was younger, I would draw very small. So now when I do large pieces, I always want to do all these little details like that, But yeah, I love how he had himself, always little secret notes to himself, I think, inside of his work, which is really interesting.
Well, are there some other Renaissance painters that you really admire? I know that there are a lot of big names. Is there some that you really gravitate towards, besides Van Eyck, Bosch, and such?
Well, definitely Da Vinci is. He is probably, obviously probably the biggest name. But the thing that I like about Da Vinci so much is that, you know, he had such an interesting life, and he lived such a long life even for his time. He lived a lot longer than most people did at that time, and he kind of got to do what he wanted, you know? He could paint what he wanted, and if he didn't finish it, he had other things going on. He was a thinker, you know, he was an inventor, he was brilliant, and, you know, and he wrote everything down pretty much. A lot of it was lost, you know, but they have translation now that you can get of his writings. They've kind of categorized them and tried to put them in order as best they could.
Right, right. How many of those pieces have you read? Have you read quite a few of them?
Some. It is so interesting, you know, to try to figure out, you know, what he was thinking, but you can see how it would be scattered, his own thoughts, you know, that he'd be on one track thinking about one thing, and all of a sudden it would completely cut to a different subject. And you know, and he would write all of this backwards, of course, too. You know, so just real brilliant guy.
You know, and I'm sure there'd be some psychologists that would call that ADD or something today, right?
I know. They'd probably give him Ritalin or something, and then we'd never have the Mona Lisa.
That's right. That's right. You know, all those great paintings. You know, and so now, in this walk of your life, how do you reflect on those painters that you discovered when you were younger? Now that you've read a lot more of their works and seen, you know, many more artists, you know, you look back and you thought, wow, this is what I used to think when I was 17, 21 and such. Now that you're 23, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Looking back, you know, at this point in time, how's you know, reflection basically, 2020?
Yeah, you know, well, I think you know, back then you think that they have actually these perfect lives, you know, and you don't realize the hardships and the things that they were forced into doing, and the dangers of the world that they lived in. You know, if they do one wrong, you know, pen stroke, you know, why did you put the Pope on the left? He should have been on the right. You know, well, off with your head. Now you're, you know, so.
Right.
Definitely.
So you see that they are as much human as we are.
Yeah, exactly.
They're not on that pedestal, except with their talent.
Right, exactly. But I do wonder what they would be doing today if they were, you know, with all of the things that we have access today.
Right. Working at Pixar or something like that. Right?
Right, exactly.
All right, Edie. Well, thanks. Appreciate it. We're going to take a quick commercial break. Hey, this is Gus Summers. You've been listening to The In Show, and we've been talking with Evie Ryland. And she's been giving some great insight, and she'll continue to do that when we come back after a quick commercial break. So you hang in there, and we'll be right back.